Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the City of Lebanon Plan Commission meeting, Monday, August 16th. We'll call this to order. Call the meeting to order. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
John Lastly.
Here.
Ashley Paddock.
Here.
Dan Bayshore.
Here.
Kevin Krulik.
Here.
Jeremy Lawler.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Brian Tandy.
Here.
Adley Mullen.
Here.
Lori Gross.
Here.
Okay. We need a motion to approve the minutes if everyone's had a chance to read them.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
John Lastly.
Aye.
Ashley Paddock. Dan Bayshore. Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Jeremy Lawler.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Adley Mullen.
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ian, you ready to start? Want to start with docket number 2140? Is that what you're on?
Yes, good evening,
Okay.
Planning Commission members. Docket number 21-40 is Four Star Real Estate Group, their primary plat for the Angeli Gardens project on the northeast side of town. A little bit of quick history here. If you recall, a couple of months ago, this property was before for a rezone, actually a rezone from Planned Unit Development to Single Family Residential SF2. So it went back from a PUD zoning that was established a number of years ago back to a standard SF2 zoning with the intention to come before you then tonight with a primary plat for an SF2 single family residential neighborhood. And that's what's before you here tonight is the primary plat application. A little bit in terms of process, certainly this had already gone through the rezone to SF2. The primary plat, it is an opportunity for the Plan Commission to review the development that's being proposed, the plat being proposed, to ensure that what they're proposing meets the standards of the Unified Development Ordinance for the SF2 zoning district and any other applicable zoning standards. So we're confirming and verifying that the lots meet their appropriate lot size, appropriate lot widths, that the right-of-way widths are all appropriate, sidewalk sizes are all appropriate. So really this is an opportunity just to verify that everything has been met that's been met. If it has been met, the expectation is that the Plan Commission will be voting to approve. And from the point in terms of after the primary plat process, then it would move then more into the construction document phase. We're reviewing the details of, you know, all of the sanitary sewer locations and elevations, all of the drainage, make sure that that gets finalized. And so we'll be moving more into that detailed construction plan phase, and that's more of an administrative process through our department. So that would happen after this. The primary plat is an administrative review process by the Planning Commission to ensure that the standards have been met according to the zoning that's established on the property. So just give you a quick overview, then we'll turn it over to the applicant to walk you through some additional details. Again, as I mentioned, this is an SF2 primary plat, so we did review it according to, and if they want to bring the screen up and kind of show you the overall plan for the site, and this will look very familiar. The concept plan that was proposed a couple of months ago, the layout is essentially the same. There's a few minor changes here and there, but in terms of the layout for the drainage, where that's most appropriate based on how the land lays, that the drainage is in very similar locations and very similar sizes. The street layouts and the lot layouts are very similar as well. I believe actually the lot count that was proposed is the same as you see here, so it's all very similar. Again, I mentioned this meets the SF2 standards, which are 9,000 square foot lot size as a minimum. There are some lots here that are larger than that. A minimum lot width of 75 feet. Again, some of them are larger than that. Front yard setback of 25 feet. Side yard setback of 7.5 feet. Again, minimums. Rear yard 20 feet. Minimum square footage is 1,500 square feet for the homes. In addition to those standard setbacks that are required of the SF2 zoning district, we also have additional standards related to architecture and landscaping that are standards of the ordinance, and those will also apply here. Just some quick highlights of what those standards would look like and how they would be applicable to this neighborhood. There's anti-monotony standards that say that no house with the same front elevation design can be within 4 lots along the same side of the block or directly across the street. And then no single front elevation can constitute more than 25% within any single phase of development. So again, we're trying to make sure that you're not repetitive in terms of the front elevations of the home, so we get some diversity there. Corner lots have to ensure that there's a minimum of 3 windows on the side of the home facing the street, just to make sure you don't have that flat blank wall facing on a street. Facades have a minimum of 50% masonry. Side and rear home elevations that abut onto a public street, like on a corner lot, We'll also include at least 30% masonry on that side that's visible from the street. We do have architectural features. There's a laundry list of about 15 different architectural features, and the requirement is that that each home contain at least 4 features from that list, so that's something we'll be reviewing as those homes come in. In terms of lot landscaping and landscaping standards, each home will have at least 2 front yard trees and 8 shrubs, and then corner lots will include an additional evergreen tree and 8 shrubs in the street side yard. And then we also require street trees every 45 linear feet along the street. So you'll see quite a bit of landscaping along each of the streets and then on each of the lots. This did go through TAC review. We have fairly extensive comments, which I've summarized in here. What I can say in terms of that is the civil engineer that's putting together the plans for the applicant has reviewed all these. They've provided response letters to each of these comments. We're reviewing those now to ensure that they've addressed everything adequately, and we'll make sure that those are all finalized before they would move forward with any construction documents and approvals to start construction. So there are extensive comments there, but those will all be addressed in a timely fashion prior to construction. We did provide just some additional summary in terms of street standards that are appropriate and applicable here, pedestrian connectivity. We do require sidewalks in all street, and then also some trail segments along some of the primary roads. They have provided for all the necessary easements for drainage and utilities infrastructure that would be appropriate for this neighborhood, and we'll be providing subdivision entry signage per the ordinance. With that, in review of the submitted primary plat as presented, planning staff finds compliance with the unified development requirements for the subject site, and we recommend, the planning staff recommends approval of the subject primary plat contingent on the following conditions. And these are fairly standard conditions for something like this. One is that the applicant adequately address any remaining TAC comments prior to submission of construction drawings and a secondary plat. And that number 2, that the applicant receive formal drainage approval from the City of Lebanon Board of Works prior to approval of construction drawings and a secondary plat. That'd be happy to answer any general questions you have for me.
Anyone from the commission have a question of Ben? Any? The applicant here?
Actually, I don't see her. Oh, you're here for the applicant? She's not here, correct? Yeah. Okay, you're here representing the applicant? Yes. Okay. I know she had a presentation, but.
Yeah, exactly. Hello, my name is Gordon Price. I'm with Steppenworth and Associates, and we're the engineering company doing this project. I apologize, Melissa's not here. We haven't heard from her, but I know she had a presentation, I'm sure, to give more insight on the development, architecture, landscape plan, and all that. I don't have that. I think Ben did a good job of explaining that the plan does meet or exceed the SF2 ordinance, and any and all TAC comments that have been brought before us for the primary plat will be addressed and in full compliance. I don't believe we're asking for any sort of waivers or variances. So we will be going with straight SF2. So with that, I'm here to answer any technical questions you guys might have concerning the plan, drainage, traffic, and et cetera. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Have anyone on the board have questions for the applicant? No questions? Okay. Lynn, you have something else you'd like to say?
Yeah, just real quickly, I know Melissa had sent me her presentation earlier, I think at a point in time when she expected to be here. I don't know if they want to pull the screen up, I can just run through, and this is more just a reminder for those that are here in the audience in terms of what's being proposed. I won't go over again, here's kind of the general site plan, which we already looked at. This is an example of what they're anticipating in terms of the entry monument that you would see along the main entry. They are looking at an amenity package that would be behind those first 4 lots there on the western entry to include some playground equipment and some small shelter to provide amenities for the folks living in there. And they're also working with the church as well to provide some connectivity from the church to this neighborhood and also probably share some access to the church with these amenities as well. Again, just examples oh, here she is. I'm stealing your thunder on your presentation, I'm sure. I'll let you start over since you're here now.
Sorry about that. Is the presentation up then? Oh, there we go. Good evening. I'm happy to be here again. My name is Melissa Gerard. I'm the entitlements manager with 4-Star Group. We are here tonight, and I know we presented to you for the rezoning, but we are also here tonight to present the primary plat. And I can tell you a little bit about it. Not much has changed about what I told you about 4-Star. I think we have about 12,000 more lots under development nationally, and another couple of few markets that we're in. But basically, we are a national real estate developer. We have offices in Indianapolis. Our Indianapolis team, every one of us has over 20 years of experience in our relative areas of expertise in development. So this is the location of Angeli Gardens, north of Chadwick, south of Auburn Meadows. I think everybody's pretty familiar with the location. There haven't been too many changes to the site plan since the one I showed you at zoning. The only difference is a couple of changes here. We have had to make the pond adjacent to Chadwick. We have had to make that a wet pond now instead of, we were showing it as dry detention earlier now, but it is now going to be a water pond. We've added a trail connection into the church's area at the church's request. We're working with them pretty closely on some easement releases and fixing their drainage. We've been on site to meet with them and work on that. I am showing a couple of amenities here that we are trying to add, a playground and a shelter house. The only real area that I have to add them on this particular site is north of the houses along Angeli Way, there at the entrance, adjacent to the church. I think I've confirmed the setbacks. I think we meet the setbacks there with Ben. But I just wanted to let you know these are tentative because I don't want to put them there if the church does not agree to have those there. I can't imagine why they would object to having a playground adjacent to the church, but I'm going to leave that up to them, and I have contacted them to ascertain whether they have a problem with that. We have also provided a trail along Elm Swamp Road at the request of your staff. So there's a trail here in this location now. This is our entrance monument, and I'm so proud of this. I worked really hard on this one. Basically, designing this subdivision is someplace that I would like to live. I don't have landscaping on it yet, but I just wanted to show you the entrance monument. So this slide will show you the playground and the shelter house that we're planning to meet, or planning to put in, subject to the church's agreement. And then now you'll see we have 2 or 3 wet ponds, where before we had 2 wet ponds and 1 dry detention area. And we've added a few trail connections along Elm Swamp Road and to the play area and to the church there in that corner. The elevations are pretty much the same ones I've already shown you. So that's it. I did read Ben's staff report, and one of the things I wanted to mention on in response on Ben's staff report, his second condition on the recommendation of approval, which is the approval of the Boone County Drainage Board. We actually got that this morning. I appeared before the Boone County Drainage Board this morning, and they gave me approval to relocate the legal drain and to reduce it down, subject to Ben and Carrie's approval, Christopher Burke and Ben and your city engineer's approval on the ultimate drainage calculations. I did want to let you know we have a fair amount of engineering in before your planning staff and your engineering staff already. Typically, we wouldn't have already done secondary plat and construction drawings for a primary plat application, but because we're trying to accelerate this one for a start actually we're trying to close in September. We have already completed our secondary plat and full-blown construction documents and submitted those to your staff. We will have a review, I think August 27th, is that what we settled on. So we've already done full-blown engineering on this project, even though it's only a primary plat for you all right now. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
You may have a question.
Melissa, real quick, and you said one of them was going to be a non-dry pond. Which one was that? I'm sorry, I did
No,
not
that was
catch.
in the previous set of revision, with the ponds.
Which is the one that's going to be a wet pond now, is my,
It's not the full dry lake area. There's just a little segment that's still owned. Can you bring the site plan up again? Yeah. There's just a little segment there where it bends to the south. We don't own all the way into the dry lake. The city owns that. But the part that we do own, we were going to have it as dry detention. It needs to be wet detention now.
so is that the bottom, the middle, or the top pond?
It's the one the furthest west and on the bottom. That one was not, that was green when I appeared before you for zoning.
Okay.
It is blue now.
Okay, and is that because you're working with the church to work on their drainage? Is that my assumption?
Partly, we are doing that. The churches, we have met on site with the church. I took our construction manager out there and our engineer, our in-house engineer, and we met with the church and we walked the site. Apparently what happened is when the force main for Auburn Meadows runs along our western boundary there, the common boundary with the church. The church's previous drainage ran east, and when the Auburn Meadows force main came through, it sliced their drainage, and the Auburn Meadows developer never fixed it for them. So we're going to fix it for them. We're actually just going to connect it into our internal storm sewers, and we're going to treat them as if they were a house connection into our subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing no questions from the board, we'll open this up to the public. And I'd like to remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak, and try not to duplicate it from someone else before. You must give your name and address so we can get that down on the thing. So I will open it up to the public hearing now. Anyone like to come forward?
Okay, my name is John Marion. My wife Judy and I live at 2423 Travis Drive in Chadwick. We're in Section 6, Lot 637. At this point, I'm not going to argue about this proposed development. I think we've talked all about the drainage, the density, and so forth. But it's obvious to me that this project has been rubber stamped before the meetings this spring, so I'm not going to talk any earlier about those concerns. I will say that all you board members, the mayor, city engineer, and the planning office should take notice and follow this project through to completion. And what I mean by that is the first stamp of approval are the people here tonight. This property has some challenges, drainage, which we discussed over and over, and the overall topography of the land opposite the Chadwick neighbors. And I'm talking about the entrance off of Elm Swamp that is extremely low. I'm talking about across the ditch from where I live, where it's 7 foot higher than my property on the opposite side of the ditch, there's got to be some challenges there to make that drain, not through just pipes and drainage like that, but natural drain. And there's going to be a lot of earth moved as I can see it. Anyway, so the overall topography of the land, lowland, as I said, at the entrance and the high bank. I'm suggesting that the city engineer watch this development very closely, and I don't know who the city engineer is, but I thought so, but I wasn't sure. But if you must, I'm just asking and saying, watch it through the infrastructure of the streets, the drainage, and the movement of land. Don't be naive to think that shortcuts and just doing things right the first time will not be made. Remember, you will only have one chance to have this developed correctly. And there's so much at stake with surrounding properties, not only in Chadwick, but Auburn Meadows, which Melissa just discussed, even countryside. When we had the meeting at the high school back in, I think, May, there were some countryside residents there, and they were having draining issues across the road from Elm Swamp. And maybe even some properties in Gulfside. And just remember, you got some tax dollars there. So you've got one chance to get this right. Your decision, you may only be on this board for a couple years. I don't know what the term is. But somebody down the road may be living with whatever decisions you make now. And I'm not talking about decisions right here tonight, but as the thing is developed, there's going to be some decisions there, I'm sure. I think that's all I need to say. I have property. I've been at this property for 33 years, built the property. I have some at stake here. There's only 3 or 4 properties that are adjacent and 7 or 8 more that are pretty close. And several of these people are here tonight. I don't know, there might be some people from Auburn Meadows, but let's just do it right. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Step forward, please.
I'm Russell Roberts. I live at 2423 Grant Boulevard, and our property adjoins almost where that lower lake is on the west end of it, right on the corner of our property. Something I'm curious about, as far as I've known, and I've talked to the mayor about this, within the last month, we had a conversation about it, and he assured me that that property where that pond is at, that lower pond, still belong to the city, because that dry lake belongs to the city. That dry lake area, surrounded by Chadwick Village, belong to the city. They've been mowing it, and it's their property. In fact, the mayor would be glad to not have it, according to his own words, because it is kind of a liability. We had visions of making something like a walking path or something out on that dry lake area, and putting maybe a pollinator garden or something out there, and making a use for that property for the community to where they could go walk and maybe bicycle, and kids have a place to, not necessarily playgrounds, just a flat area for paths and places to walk and get out in the neighborhood and walk the dogs and bicycle, whatever. But that's been in the thoughts of people for quite some time. But I'm curious about how they got possession of that little dip down in there where that lake is. Because if that's city property, did they sell it to them, or how did they acquire that? How did they get that included in their property? It looks to me like that dips into the area that the dry lake that belonged to the city. Now, did the city sell on that property, or what happened there? I'm curious.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
There's been no change of hands of any property there. The land that the city owns does not include that area where they're planning to put a pond. That area has always been owned by that adjacent property owner. It was included in the PUD that was approved. Melissa, help me out, what year was that? Early 2000s, that project was approved on that property. To my knowledge, no land has ever changed hands there. I don't even know, though, historically, how that area became city property. I think at some point it was given to the city by the residents of Chadwick, but I couldn't tell you for certain.
So as part of that dry lake does belong to the city, correct?
No. The area where they're...
I've known that all along, that the city owned that.
Well, there is a strip at the north end of it that was always been owned by the adjacent farm fields there.
Okay.
It doesn't look in appearance any different than the rest of the dry lake that Chadwick wraps around, but there is an area of grass on the north end of that has never been farmed, and that is the area that is part of the Angeli Gardens primary plat before you.
I think one time maybe Dale Smith was going to build along there where that higher ground is.
That's right. It was Dale Smith and others had that project approved in the early 2000s.
The pond's going to be where that higher ground is now.
Yes.
What's it going to do to the rest of the dry lake?
Nothing will change on the rest of the dry lake. It will remain as it is. The city will continue to maintain that area. In fact, we'll probably be awarding a contract on Monday night to re-dredge the ditch area, and we'll see that happen sometime this fall.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak? We'll see if anybody else comes and you can speak again, one time. Okay, anyone else like to speak? Okay, you'd like to come up, please?
Are they going to be putting like a tree line in to get rid of that?
I'm Angela Owens. We reside at 2425 Travis Drive. We're actually right there in the cul-de-sac that's going to be mainly affected by all this. Just kind of curious on what's going to happen with the ditch that goes behind our property.
I can take that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Kevin.
Nothing will change with the ditch.
Okay, Ben?
Let's let everybody speak and close the public hearing, then we'll address comments.
That's what I said. Here we go. That's your question? Okay. Anyone else like to speak? Okay, John, you
I just wanted to ask kind of the same question.
can go up to the microphone. Go up to the microphone and ask it.
Mr. Krulik mentioned cleaning out the ditch. Is that a truism? Is that going to happen this fall? I'm asking the ditch behind their property and our property.
He'll be able to answer that when we close the meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, we can close, if there's nobody else willing to speak, we'll close the public hearing.
Should I respond to a couple of those comments?
Now I'll give you that, right? I'll close the hearing first, and then you can respond. Okay? Okay, Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce a couple of people here with me, but I do have some folks from Steppenworth, which is our engineering firm. I have Gordon Kreitz and Leanne Farrell is over there. So if you have any engineering-related comments, they might be able to address. But I wanted to first address Mr. Marion's comment that this has been rubber stamped. I have not sensed that at all. I've tried really, really hard to make this a project that Lebanon would be proud of and that you would want. And I think Gordon can tell you, because I live here, because I live in this area, because my family has lived in this area for a long time, I've taken, of all the projects that I have on my repertoire right now, I've taken a particular interest in this one and have been dotting every I and crossing every T and making sure all the trees are exactly where I want them on this particular project. I have worked really hard because this is my community too. And you know, who knows, at some point I may decide to downsize and I might want less than 8 acres to mow and maintain. You know, I'm thinking of this as someplace that maybe, everything I ask myself in this subdivision is this someplace where I would want to live? So I hope you don't view it as a rubber stamp. I certainly don't. I hope that you would see that as I do, that this is a project that Lebanon can be proud of. I did want to address his comments with regard to entrance off of Elm Swamp. That is something that I neglected to mention in my opening presentation. Your city engineer has requested some improvements along Elm Swamp Road for the duration of our frontage, and we are going to be improving Elm Swamp Road to some extent in that area. And those are in the construction plans that we have already submitted because we've already submitted our secondary plat. The drainage issues, I'm not an expert in the field, but all I can tell you is this project, because there is county concerns and issues and city engineers or city issues, that this project has, from a drainage standpoint, has probably been reviewed by as many people as you could possibly have review it. And you have the best hydraulic engineers in the state representing the city of Lebanon, Christopher Burke. It doesn't get any better than that. And we have always been kind of ahead on our engineering, so they have reviewed some engineering even in rezoning. So they've seen it at the rezone stage, they've seen it at the primary plat stage, and now they actually have our secondary plat and construction drawings actually before them right now, even as we're seeking to get a primary plat, and nobody has raised any issues with me. And like I said, I didn't have any significant concerns from the Boone County Drainage Board on this either today. They approved it, subject only to final approval by Christopher Burke and your city engineer. Mr. Krulik is correct. There is a little segment of what they commonly refer to as the dry lake that always has been in our landowners' possession. The story with the dry lake, as I understand it, there's 7 acres south of our property line that a previous owner was not mowing. It's kind of been no man's land in Chadwick. The Chadwick Homeowners Association was not mowing it. The landowner was not mowing it. Nobody was maintaining it. I think probably the adjacent landowners raised some issues with the city. The city sued the previous owner, not us, I think for mowing, for a weed ordinance thing. And the previous owner said, well, I can't do anything with it. I'll just give it to you if you want to mow it, you can do it. So as far as I understand, that was the story of it. But the city does own it. We are not proposing to transfer title or ownership. We are not using that area for our drainage. Our drainage does not even go to that dry lake area. We have detained everything in the ponds that are on our property, the 3 ponds that are on our property. And in terms of the ditch, I don't know that I can answer that. I know we're meeting the release rates that are required by your ordinance into the ditch, and nobody's told me that there's a problem with those release rates, but it sounds to me like your city engineer is telling you that that's going to be dredged this fall too. So, but if you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for your approval of our primary plat tonight.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Dan, you have something else you'd like to say? Okay,
Can I ask Kevin a question?
sure.
Kevin, so they're actually dredging the area behind Mr. Marion's property. Is that only for this project, or is this something that's been?
No, I'm glad you asked that. It's not to prepare for this project. It is something that has been done historically every few years. I'm not for certain of the last time it's been done. I do know I've been employed here 5 years, and we have not dredged it in that 5-year period. So, as I said, though, we are currently receiving proposals for that work, and we will be reading those proposals aloud and hopefully awarding a contract on Monday night.
So, ask your question is, so basically, but the bottom two lakes are actually going to be, they're connected to each other physically by an underground piping. Above ground should storm drain system to the north, so nothing will be coming to the south end by their properties, is that correct?
That's correct. Their site is self-contained, if you will, from a stormwater and drainage standpoint. All the runoff generated by that site is collected by its on-site storm sewer system, is transferred to the ponds through that system, is detained in the ponds, and then released at the allowable release rate, which is a restricted release rate, restricted to 0.1 CFS and 0.25 CFS in the 10 and 100-year events. So the release rate will be drastically restricted from what it is allowed to release today, just from the natural topography.
See, I know living in Auburn Meadows to the north, I see from the south what he sees from the north, I see from the south. The south, I know they sit a lot lower, so just I agree with him, there's got to be a lot of soil moved around there to get things to work, right? But at this point, it looks like you're doing what you're supposed to, but like I said.
Kevin, do you know when that pipe was broke? I mean, that Melissa's talking, I mean, my only question is,
I don't.
I know it's been like wet for a long, long time, and I just didn't know if that was something recently, or?
I just want to make sure you guys speak into the microphones. We can't hear you in the back of the room.
Sorry. The pipe that was broken, is that something that was broke like a long time ago, or was this something somewhat recent? I mean, I guess growing up there, there's been water standing right there on that left side going down, and I just wondered if that was a recent thing, or?
It was severed when the Auburn Meadows force main was installed. The Auburn Meadows force main cut right through their drainage tile.
So 10 years ago? Or-
Well, it was probably 2005. I was looking
Yeah,
at the
15.
easement for that because it goes across our property. About 2005, the church, we had a long conversation with the church. We met with them for a long time. They said they complained about it for a couple of years to the developer, and the developer never really did anything about it. And they finally just got tired. Right now, the water, they have a small dry detention area on their property, and it doesn't really drain. It just sits there till it evaporates, basically. But we're gonna fix that for them. We've told them we're being good neighbors, and, it's my opportunity to do something good for this community too. So, and it's really not a significant, effort on our part. We're just gonna connect it in to one of the backyard inlets in that adjoins it, as if it's a house going the other way, facing the other way.
Has it been cameraed? Is that how we know that it's broke, or how do we know that it's broke?
They just know because it stopped working when they installed the force main. Their dry detention area stopped working when they broke the force main. It would be a lot of effort to dig it up and find the problem. It's frankly easier for us just to give them a new connection.
I guess just to reiterate some of the conversation we had up here so that the audience can hear it, the proposed Angeli Gardens project will install a storm sewer system that will collect all the runoff generated by that site. The storm sewer system will transfer that runoff to the detention ponds. It will then be released at the permitted release rate, which is a restricted release rate given the drainage issues with this, the Small Reynolds ditch, which is the ultimate downstream ditch that receives these waters. There will be no direct discharge onto the Chadwick neighborhood or the city's dry pond area on the north end of Chadwick. The city is indeed planning to dredge the Chadwick ditch, about 1,600 feet of ditch that goes all the way across the north end of Chadwick and connects to the Small Reynolds ditch. We'll be opening quotes and reading those aloud on Monday for hopefully an award. The only other thing maybe to reiterate, there is, and just checking GIS, if you were to look at that, to Mr. Roberts' point, if you were to look at that entire field area, the grass field area on the north end of Chadwick. About the northern 190 feet of it is actually owned by the same landowner that has always owned the Angeli Gardens project area. So the northern 190 feet of that grassy area is not city property. It's to the south of there that is city property. And we will make sure through the technical review of the secondary plat and the construction plans that we'll maintain access easements so that we can continue to maintain that area. I think I caught all the questions and comments. Is there anything I missed? Okay.
I think we got all the questions answered, I hope. Ben, you have anything else you want to say? We're ready for a motion, are we? No, I think we're ready to move forward, okay?
Close the public hearing.
You talk to her after our meeting, would ask her afterwards, would you? Okay, I would entertain a motion to either approve or disapprove the secondary plat, primary plat, I'm sorry.
I make a motion to approve the subject primary plat contingent on the following conditions: that all TAC comments are addressed and it meets stormwater approval.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, would you call the roll, please?
John Lashley,
Aye.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Jeremy Lawler,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ali Mullen,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passed. Thank you. Okay, Ben, you ready for docket number 2141?
I don't have the agenda in
Or
front of me. We have a
2142,
couple
I'm
items
sorry.
on there that have been continued to next month.
Right.
2141 and I think
Is one of them?
2143.
Right,
So those two items have continued. So the only thing we have left on the agenda is 2142.
right.
And that's a PUD rezone for Henke Development. This is additional acreage that they now have under contract. It's adjacent to the site to the southeast. And so we'll pull that up real quick. Walk through a little bit of background here. All right. Let me zoom in just a bit here. All right, so this is the overall concept plan for Waterford development. You see down here to the southeast corner here is a site of about 60 acres outlined in red. That is property that wasn't originally included in the PUD rezone for Waterford. At that time, the applicant didn't have that property under contract, so this is a recent piece of property that they've got under contract that they would then like to just fold this into the overall PUD for Waterford. So what you have before you here tonight is the PUD rezone. So that PUD zoning district will be placed on this 60 acres. And then also it would establish the PUD ordinance, the standards that were originally approved for Waterford would be extended to this property. As you can see here in the conceptual land use area, they are proposing to extend the lifestyle community subdistrict, which is in essence their golf course / residential district, to this property. And then all the standards that were adopted previously for the PUD ordinance for Waterford would be extended to this property for that lifestyle community subdistrict. So just to quickly go over what that would mean, there are a variety of different housing types that can be proposed. Single-family detached rear load. Things like duplexes would be permitted, townhomes would be permitted. I don't know what they're currently thinking in terms of the exact product type here. That's going to be further developed as they get into preliminary planning phases. But in the conceptual stage here, there's a variety of different residential product types that would be permitted in the lifestyle subjects district that would be extended to this property, along with all the applicable development standards and architectural and landscaping requirements. So that's what we have here is an additional piece of property that they now have under contract. They're wanting to extend that PUD rezone and ordinance to this piece of property, establish the property as a lifestyle community sub-district and all the standards that go with that. In terms of process, this is a PUD rezone and ordinance. So this is a recommendation by the Plan Commission to the council, who then would adopt the rezone. So that would be before you tonight is a consideration of a recommendation for this rezone request. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Would you explain what the PUD stands for?
Yeah, sorry, I was using an acronym. It says Planned Unit Development. Essentially what that is a zoning district where the applicant has the ability to write their own standards, where they are choosing to do some creative solutions that maybe don't quite meet the letter or the standard of our ordinance. So in this case, they've written their own flexibility in terms of residential standards to allow them to both do a more traditional detached product, to also be able to potentially do some other products that might be attached, like townhomes, to be able to do front load garages, to be able to do rear load garages. There's different standards depending on the type of product that could go here. So they, in essence, wrote their own standards for each one of those uses to allow each one of those types of uses to go there. This is still highly conceptual. As you can see, what you see in color on this map represents about 2,000 acres. So we're talking about a large-scale development here. They will be coming in, my understanding is later this year, with their first phase of development, which will have additional detail from the preliminary planning stage. That will come back to the Plan Commission. There will be a public hearing again, so there will be notice to any of the adjoining neighbors for that preliminary plan. At that point, you'll start to see some of the road layouts, lot layouts, the golf course layout, and things like that will all be included in that preliminary plan. So the PUD rezone stage is very conceptual. The land uses are conceptual, and of course, they're showing some primary road segments here that again are highly conceptual that will be further developed in the preliminary planning stage down the road. So this is really, the PUD rezone just establishes the uses that are permitted and the development standards that are applicable to those variety of uses.
Any questions for Ben? Okay, now seeing no questions or hearing any, would the Hinkie development come forward, please?
Doug Fleener, I reside at 3844 Conifer Drive in Zionsville, Indiana, for the record, and I'm a partner in Hinkie Development Group.
Okay. Go ahead.
I thought you called me forward.
Yeah, did you have something to say on the development?
I don't at this time. I'm happy to address any questions.
Okay. Nobody speak? And we'll get Ben, was you ready to open up for the public hearing? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. And for any person come up for over this Hinkie development, over this PUD. Right. Yeah.
My name's Bill Preston. I live at 2555 South 400 East Lebanon. We're across the street from this new addition to the Hinkie development, and my primary concern is the drainage. We have a couple drain tiles that go from our property over to the county drain. What was the name of that? Ottinger Drain. We've located both of them, both the ones we're aware of. We put locator dye in them. We did GPS location at the dye entry point and the exit point in the Ottinger Drain. The drain on that side, we have in our front yard a storm drain that goes into like a drain tile that goes under the street, and then along the west side of the road on the side that is where the development is. It goes south down to the bridge by Perryware School and into Ottinger Drain. So I just will want to make sure that that drain tile is maintained, that drainage is maintained, or we're going to have flooding in the lower area of our front yard. That drains our front yard, basically.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that that stays drained. So my wife has, I think, some comments too, but that was my main concern.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
is Bonnie Preston, and we live again at 2555 South 400 East in Lebanon. And my concern is, so we moved here 3 years ago, and we wanted to live in the country. We have chickens, we have an orchard with fruit trees, and we've put up like a windbreak with 3 rows of trees on 800 pine trees in 3 rows so that there'll be a windbreak. And so I get that there's 2 different, I'm an attorney, I'm not a drainage engineer, but I get that there's 2 different kinds of drainage. So Bill talked about the drainage that's going to go under the ground, under the road, and over to the drain. But what I'm worried about is the runoff from potential buildings, because if you're going to take up all that land, it's a huge amount of land. They're going to put buildings on all of it. There isn't going to be anywhere for the water to go. It's going to drain right across the street into our yard. It's going to kill off the trees, and by the time they build, the trees are going to be pretty substantial. The other thing is I had a question about which side of the street the utilities would be on, because right now the utilities are across the street. So if they we don't know how that's going to work. They're going to have to widen the road because there's going to be, new homes to the right. So if they widen the road, we wondered if they're going to take our property to widen the road or if they're going to use the property across the street, because the utilities are already on poles across the street. So I wondered if anybody could speak to that.
We'll answer that after the public hearing.
All right. And I guess another thing that I'm worried about, if people are, going to answer things, I don't understand. I get, now they're going to have this Angelique development, and they're going to have too many people for the school system, and they're going to have too many people for the hospital system, and they're going to have too many people for the grocery store. And so I don't understand where all those people are going to shop and get medical care and send their kids to school. So I wondered if people could speak to that. I don't know. I mean, maybe they're planning a new school or a new hospital or something. And then the other thing that I'm concerned about is one of the reasons we moved out to the country is that we like the view across the street. And if they put up, a 3-story apartment or something, I guess they're limited to single-family duplex and townhomes. But I'm concerned about the write-your-own standards concept, because I think if there are rules and then somebody skirts the rules and writes their own, and I'm not sure what their rules are, but last time when they wanted to do the, development down the street, they lessened the size of the lot to like 50 feet or some tiny 50, or it was very small. And that's that whole front-loading thing, I think, where you can have like a townhome or row home, like a row home you'd have in Baltimore. So I just wanted to kind of get more information about that. I think that's it. So my concern is the drainage just across, just like runoff, not actual drainage under the ground. The trees that we have, the view that we have, and then where are all these people going to shop, get groceries, do their laundry if they need a laundromat, where are they going to go to the hospital? Where are all those services going to be, those public services?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak from the public? Not seeing anyone else who'd like to speak, I'll close the public hearing. Ben, would you like to speak now, please?
Sure. I'll just generally address some of the questions or comments. First on drainage. We talked a little bit about that also on the last application too. The way our drainage ordinance is written is the developer is not permitted to sheet drain water off of that property into adjoining sites. They have to collect all of their stormwater within the site into their storm sewer system, into their drainage ponds, and then it gets released to an appropriate outlet at an acceptable rate, like Kevin was explaining on that previous project. So they're not, by our stormwater ordinance, which is the law of the land for this property, they're not allowed to let water from any, particularly any new stormwater from the development, sheet drain into neighboring properties. That's just not permitted. And we'll review all of those calculations and construction standards when they come in with further information on their preliminary planning and construction documents associated with those. We'll be reviewing probably a drainage ordinance. It's probably 2,000 pages thick to ensure that all our drainage calculations are appropriate. and their planning in terms of collecting that stormwater as appropriate and releasing appropriately to the appropriate outlets. So they won't be able to, regardless of how many homes or structures they build, allow water to sheet drain onto neighboring properties. That's just not permitted by our stormwater ordinance, so we'll be reviewing that when further details come in. In terms of 400 East out there and where utilities are located, where they will be located, those are all yet to be determined. Certainly, they're starting to work on some of their layout in terms of the development. Once we get further into preliminary planning stage, we'll have a better idea where utilities are going to be located, where roads specifically are going to be located. Certainly, the intention here is to have the least amount of impact on existing development in the area. So the plan would be to, if there's any right-of-way required for 400 East to expand it in the future, we're going to take as much of that from the development side as we can so that we're not impacting neighboring properties. You have a much larger impact on something that's already developed than you would on a cornfield across the street. So that's what we'll be trying to do, and I'm sure they're going to be relocating utilities that are already there. It's electric on a pole. There's a likelihood they're probably going to want those buried anyway, so they'll be putting them somewhere else where they're most appropriate for that street. In terms of views, again, until we get further into preliminary planning stage and understand where the golf course layout is and where they're intending to put certain types of homes and lots, that comes into further preliminary planning stage, which is the next step after this rezone. Once they get that established, we do have a PUD ordinance that's been adopted for 18 months that has all the standards associated with the entire development. It's available. In fact, I think I have sent it to the neighboring property owners, so they do have all the standards associated with that. We have reviewed them all multiple times at this point in terms of lot sizes and what's permitted in terms of height and things like that for the overall development. So a lot of this will become much clearer once we get into preliminary planning stage next and understand what the golf course layout is, which dictates the entire development, and then move then into street layouts and lot layouts and things like that. So much further information to come. The first step, though, is the rezone before they would move in that preliminary planning stage. So this is the step that we need to do that will allow them to go further into further development of the site.
Ben, is this property currently in the city limits right now?
It is.
Across the street's not, though. Their property technically is not.
Yeah, 400 East is the extent of the city limits right now.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions for Ben? Ben, would you be sure that when somebody asks to see those things about the PUD, the rules?
Say that again?
Did you say you sent things to?
Yeah, I did communicate with Ms. Preston probably a little over a month ago now, I think it was. Yeah,
Okay.
and I did send her a copy of the PUD ordinance. It's a large.
I know it is, that's what I said.
It's got a lot in there, but I'd be happy to follow up with the Prestons at some point later. If they want to review it with me, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, anything else?
Just one quick thing to add. I maybe saw some head shaking. When Ben referred to as the PUD process as the ability for them to set their own standards. Those are development standards. They can't set their own standards for how they build roads, how they build sewers, how they do drainage. Those things are also already established by city standards, city design standards, city drainage ordinances. PUDs do not change the way they have to deal with utilities. So just to put everyone at ease, that doesn't mean they can write their own design standards from a technical standpoint. That's just development, setbacks, architecture, things of that nature is what a PUD refers to.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'd entertain a motion up or down on this issue, on the PUD.
On docket 20-42, I would send a favorable recommendation to the Common Council.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for docket number 2142. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
JohnLassley.
Aye.
Ashley Paddock. Yes. Dan Bayshore.
Yes.
Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Jeremy Lawler.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Ally Mullen.
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay. And that motion passes. Okay? We have any other business, Ben?
Again, just want to I know there's some other folks in the audience, they may have been here for one of the other applications on the agenda, and I was going to pull up the agenda so I can identify what those items were real quickly.
Homewood Health Campus is one of them.
That's not what I wanted. Give me just 1 second. I want to make sure that we don't send any away confused about what happened here tonight. So we had 2 additional items that were on the agenda that are getting continued to the September meeting. Whoops. So the first item, the Homewood Health Campus Development Plan, that has been continued to the September meeting. We had some concerns brought up to us by one of the neighboring property owners about drainage. And so we're taking a little bit further look at that with the applicant to make sure that we're not causing any undue stress on the neighboring property as it relates to drainage. And I know Kevin and actually his staff member have already been out there on site just investigating what was going on. So we did ask the applicant to continue that to the September meeting in order to give us a little bit of additional time to evaluate that and make sure that we've got the appropriate drainage solution out there for that addition that's being proposed. So the Homewood Health Campus application has been continued to the September meeting. And then the other one, it was a development plan for a speculative industrial building on State Road 39 south of town. They're looking at some additional things related to architecture on the building, may end up going to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance. So they did continue their development plan application for that building to the September meeting as well. So those 2 items both will not be heard tonight. They'll be heard at the September meeting.
Hey, we addressed one, we got the information. We live right on it.
Yes, yeah, we got your letter. They have your letter.
Okay, do I have a chance to say something else?
If you
don't think about that. Okay.
I think that's.
Yeah, I'll give you your 3 minutes. What do you want to speak?
Just real quick, okay. We're Jeff and Renee Stanley. We live right behind Homewood. And we actually bought our property from Trilogy, Randy Bufford, September 13, 1999. And we've always kind of struggled with our septic basement. Not at first, it was fine. We never had an issue. But as they built up, as Goodwill built up, we're kind of drowning over there. And we sent in a letter where we've lost over 30 trees. And now it's just a constant battle to keep, the water out of our basement, keep our septic running. And at one time we'd asked through Shaker Square Villas, they were coming there if we could, bring a sewer line through there. So we didn't know there was a way to bring a sewer line to us with this new addition or address our issue. There's actually a pond that sits there. And if you want pictures, we got pictures. There's ducks there in the spring.
It's not a pond, it's actually their.
No, I know.
Our backyard. Yeah, it turns into a pond. We have mallards in our pool from it.
Yeah,
It's a
and
mess.
along the back side, which would be the south side, it floods too. So we're just, if someone's looking into it, that's fine. We just know when they build this, and we're not surprised that they're doing it. We knew at the time that was a possibility, so we can't argue that point. And then we just want to make sure that we're not sure, how close your buildings are, property line? Okay. Because when I was talking to the guys in the easement, I've been doing the survey, we have documentation of what the closest they can build to us. So we just want to make sure that's followed. But the biggest thing, we're just looking for some help, maybe some way to hook into the city sewer.
We're living the concern that a lot of people here have expressed could happen to them. We're living it.
Yeah.
And we've been coughing. We have allergies. We can't have water in our basement. We can't have stuff rotting on our property. You can hear it in our voices. It's killing us.
We're just looking for some help. That's all. And like I said, we expected the addition sometime at some point. We're actually pretty happy we made it 21 years before it did happen. So.
But we've invested a lot of time and energy in our property. We love our property. It's a historic home. And John, you've probably been there. I mean, I've invested a lot of energy in gardening. I'm a master gardener, and we have 3 acres and, fruit trees, and we're really proud of it. We've lived in Lebanon. I've lived there my entire life. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents. Our two daughters have chose to raise their families here. And, you know, we're proud to be here. And we're okay with Homewood. They've been good neighbors.
They have
but-
been good neighbors.
But
We
we
haven't
want to
had
stay
issues.
where we are, and we physically won't be able to if the flooding continues. Something happened. I know that they took all of we watched the truckloads when they dug the retention pond for Walmart. We watched them bring it to the Goodwill property and dump it. Load after load after load, and that just raised the elevation, and it was more than we could deal with.
Now, a few years ago, someone did put a pipe on our south
I think
property.
Randy had that done,
Yeah.
the trilogy.
Yeah, but that didn't really do anything, so. Anyway, as the project progresses, if you could keep us informed and someone look at it, and it sounds like you've already got someone, perfect. Are they gonna get with us? We haven't had anybody reach out to us. Okay, that's right. Okay, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the board? Okay, we have no other business that I know of. Anybody else have other business? Okay, there's one more motion that I would listen to.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, and we'll see you in September.
Kelly, I got a
Okay.
suggestion. When
Thank
you're
you.
free.